Thank you all for joining us. My name is Ashley Zabrowski. I've probably communicated with at least you or one of your colleagues the past couple of weeks. So we are happy to have you guys joining us for Resi January the 11th through the 13th. Today we have this webinar to help you guys with your partnering now that partnering is now open. And we also have LSN CEO Dennis Ford on the call as well, who's going to be doing a fundraising boot camp, which is just, again, to aid in your efforts in your fundraising journey. And then we also have our VP of Business Development and Chief Conference Officer, Greg Mannix, on the call as well. And we're going to be doing some demos for you throughout this call. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dennis.
So just a little bit about our company. Life Science Nation really, we do these partnering conferences, and we're kind of unique in the way that we do them because we have two databases that we curate. One is called the Investor Database, and we have 10 categories of investors ranging from family offices and angels, from private equity to venture capital, hedge funds, corporate, big pharma. So we have a lot of different categories of investors that we track, and we have a team of investor researchers that basically we've been around for about 8 years. And so our investor researchers every 6 months or so will call the investors that we keep in our database and find out what they're up to as far as their investment mandates. How many investments have they done? How much dry powder do they have left? Have they changed their theme or their strategy? And so we really keep track of all that information and we put it in a database. And so that has other meanings as we go forward, because since we have a database of investor profiles, we can get that database to the fundraising CEOs and scientist entrepreneurs in the world who really need to be able to get a database of investors that are a fit for their stage of development in their products. Because, you know, what happens is as we travel the world to all the incubators and accelerators from China to the Pacific Rim to Europe to all over North America, we find a lot of the incubators and accelerators, there's a list, a spreadsheet that goes around with a bunch of investors on it, but it's not really updated and it doesn't really say what the investment mandates are or explain exactly what kind of technologies they're looking for or how much money they have, et cetera. So we have this database that really has robust information, and we've been curating it for almost 8 years. So it's a really cool database. We also have a company database where we have 57,000 companies, which we also curate. And so that's good for a competitive analysis, because when we run into fundraising CEOs and scientist entrepreneurs, they say, so we have this technology and we're the only game in town. And we go, tell me more about the technology. And then we go, maybe if we do a search, and they'll say you won't find anything, but more often than not, we find other companies that are doing the same thing. And so it kind of gets into this whole mode. It's, you know, if you have some distinct value in a technology that you've developed, be it drugs, devices, diagnostics, or digital health, it's really good to know where you stand, not only in the regional landscape that you're in, but also in the global landscape, because we find that it might not be 100 companies, but it might be 20 companies that are doing something either similar to you, and you need to understand who they are and where you're at in comparison to them. Because if there ever becomes a time in when you're doing some due diligence, the investors will no doubt be able to find them, and you'll have to be able to describe how you fit against your competition. The other part of, so the foundation of our company is these two databases, and then having a database of investors is really cool because we have this conference called the Resi Conference, which means Redefining Early Stage Investments. And we've been doing that for about 7 years. And the thing that's really interesting about the Resi Conference is it's a dedicated partnering conference. So we have about 2,000 global investors that will come to our Resi conferences that happen about 5 times a year. So we'll have one in January coming up, which is the JPM event, and it has a bunch of conferences that revolve around JPM. And so we'll be one of those conferences. We've been there for many years in Union Square at the Marine Memorial Hotel. And the last time we were at that particular event, we had like 1,200 people. So we had 600 global investors and 600 early stage companies. And we have this partnering system that basically matches the investor together with the company. And, that's like a really important aspect of who LSN does and what our partnering conferences are all about, because we keep profiles on the buyers, which are the investors, and the sellers, which are the technology companies. We're able to load the investor profiles into our partnering system when we have a conference. So if you go to a Resi conference, you can just put your profile in and you can do a simple search. And if we have 600 investors there, it'll say, here's 100 that are a fit for you. And so by doing that, if you're a drug company, you don't want to talk to a medical device investor. And if you're a medical device company, you don't want to talk to a diagnostic or a digital health investor. You want to talk to somebody that's in the same sector as you. So we have that capability. And then we'll talk a little bit more today about how to message investors. And then we'll talk a little bit about partnering. And Greg will give you a demo of the database, and we'll do all that within 45 minutes. So I better get moving on to the next slide. As you see here, we kind of talked a little bit about the investor database and the company database. And then we have another division in our company, Life Science Nation, which is called the Focus on Cures Accelerator. And we really spend a lot of time helping fundraising CEOs and scientist entrepreneurs getting their messaging right. I wrote a book on the subject, the Life Science Executives Fundraising Manifesto. And if any of you would like a free copy of the book, we can send you a PDF. But the book really goes through how to set yourself up properly for a global fundraise and how to get your branding and messaging right. So when I've been working with the NIH for many, many years, and all of the different divisions. And so when we get fundraising CEOs coming to us, they'll send us their executive summary and their PowerPoint. And so the first thing I always look for is there a tagline that kind of 5 or 6, 7 words that really nets out like what your value proposition is and what your company does. And then is there a 5 or 6 sentences elevator pitch that really clarifies where your company is and where it sits? And then is there a 1-page data sheet that kind of nets out everything, who the advisors are, how much money you've raised, how much money you're looking for, what your KOLs look like, what your product looks like? And, we like to see that in a 1-page summary so that somebody could just quickly look at it and decide that you're a company that they might want to have a chat with. And then there's, the 2-page executive summary, which to me is the story of your company and your team and your technology, how all that kind of came together. And then there's the 10 to 12-page PowerPoint, which we can talk a little bit about today. So in the Focus on Cures Accelerator, we have a 1-week class. We do one-on-one projects with companies where we'll do their branding and messaging for them. We've just signed up and been doing a lot of work with the TABA capability that's inside of the NIH, which if you're a phase 1 company, I think you can spend $6,000. And if you're a phase 2 company, I think it's up to 60. But in order to do a global campaign, you need some marketing support as far as capital goes, because you're going to need a database. You're going to have to get a campaign management system. When we get clear of COVID, you're probably going to be doing some traveling either across North America or North America and Europe. And so being able to, run a campaign and get the data and set up your campaign management system and buy tickets to conferences are all really important, but it's all very expensive, as you'll see in a couple of slides. This TABA program can help you with that. And it's basically filling out a form in the application. And then we have some services that fit into TABA that we could help you with as well. So we have the Resi conference, which we've been doing for 8 years, but we also just recently introduced 2 new conferences. One is called 4D Meets AI. And so when I say 4D, the 4Ds. I'm usually saying drugs, devices, diagnostics, and digital health. And so we wanted to get in front of the trend and have a partnering conference for companies that are using big data, machine learning, and AI to develop products. And we wanted to have a partnering conference where we invited all of the investors that are interested in products that are being developed with AI in mind, and put them together. So we have this conference that we have the Resi conference that runs for 3 days, and then we have the 4D Meets AI conference runs for 2 days. And then we have another conference called Longevity, Health, and Innovation. And we're partnering with a company called Mary Furlong Associates. And this is for, the 15 or so diseases that really impact the elderly and the boomer generation. And so it's all of the diseases like cardio and onc and CNS and hearing and sight and all of the things that affect that age tech world. And so we have a Resi conference that's 3 days, and then we run the 4D Meets AI and the Longevity, Health, and Innovation conferences back to back. And we have this thing we call Life Science Nation Health Tech Partnering Week, where you can go to a Resi conference and meet a bunch of investors. And then if you have an AI product or something that fits into the longevity, health, and innovation, you can go to those 2 conferences or one of them, and then have 2 days. So 3 days of Resi and 2 days of the other conferences. And, the whole reason behind this is so that you can get in front of as many investors as possible, because when you're raising money, it's really a numbers game. Getting in front of as many investors as you can just really makes it work, because at the end of the day, you can't be in a region and talk to a couple of dozen investors and expect to get funded, because it's just not going to work that way from the numbers perspective. If you go into our database, Greg will show you, there'll probably be like 500 or 600 companies, investors that we vetted that we know are a fit for you globally. And then, how do you go after those and whittle those down so that you wind up with a handful of companies that could probably give you some money? Thank you, Ashley. If you can go to the next slide. We find that when fundraising CEOs and scientist entrepreneurs go to these partnering conferences like we put on, and our conferences are really different. We're not educational, and we're not informational, and we're not trying to do fireside chats and have workshops and seminars around trends and reimbursement and things like that. We're really into just concentrating on investors, having investors in panels telling you what a therapeutic investor looks like from a VC perspective, or a family office for early stage, or angels. We really concentrate on the experiential aspect of getting you matched up with investors so that you can have 12 or 18 meetings over a couple of day period, where you're going one-to-one with investors that are a fit for your stage of development, your product. And so, a lot of the people will typically ask when you go to the meeting, so are you raising capital? And sometimes if it's an early stage company, they'll say, well, I'm kind of raising capital. I think I'm raising capital, but they won't really say, yes, I'm definitely raising capital. And so a lot of the coaching that we do is really trying to help out. What's the 2-year plan? What's the 3-year plan? How are the milestones laid out? And how much money do you need for that? And so we also say, do you know how long it takes to raise capital? Because sometimes people will think, oh, it's 3 to 6 months. And it could be if you were extremely lucky. But for the most part, I like to plan on 9 to 18 months to cover all your bases. And so if you're thinking about, how much you're raising, and if you're raising 200,000 or 2 million or 20 million, it really doesn't matter. It still takes the same amount of time, no matter what the amount is. And that's something that we've seen over and over again. And so it looks to us like, if you're a seed round, it's like, 25,000 to 2 million. And if you're a Series A, it's 2 million to 10. And if you're a Series B, it's 10 million to 50 million. And that's kind of the world that we live in. And then, mapping the right investors for the right part of your fundraise, whether you're seed or you're Series A or Series B. are you raising capital? Obviously you are, so the answer is yes. But then if we ask you, how much are you raising? That's a really important part of the equation. And then knowing how long it takes. So when I first started the Resi conference series, and then how this kind of morphed or evolved into this life science partnering week, is you don't want to just go to one meeting a year or two meetings a year and hope that you get somebody that you can meet and you can raise money from them. It's really an ongoing process. And so we wanted to have every couple of months a fundraising CEO or scientist entrepreneur would have the ability to. Legal seems low here. What does that typically? Oh, yeah, that's a good point, Jeff. Thank you. So these are just kind of ballparks when you're doing your legal things in a fundraise. In the legal fees are low. I would agree with that. But we were just basically referring to if you're getting all your documents together and you're putting uh, your your campaign together, you'd probably run this stuff by lawyers to make sure that everything you're saying is correct. But yeah, that's a really good question. And there's another one from Matt. We're raising 1 million seed round, but are 40% subscribed. Do we state? I'm a big fan of like always telling people exactly what's going on so you don't have to remember anything that you're trying to spin. So if you get in front of some investors and they say, so where are you at? And you say, we're doing $1 million seed round. We've got 40 million, 400,000 soft circled, and we're looking for another 6. That's great. I mean, everybody knows what you're looking for, but in that particular situation, you'd have to be really careful because you want to go after angels and family offices and people that are going to be able to write a check for that amount. And some of the investors might have a particular watermark that they have to get X amount of money into a particular deal. And so that could impact whether they would want to fill out a round for you if it's a small amount. So we can go on to the next slide. The whole point of that first slide was it's typically going to cost between 60 and 90,000 just to get off the ground and do a year or 18 months worth of traveling around and preparing for this. They're just really kind of general guidelines. It could be less, it could be more, but we wanted to just kind of get into the headspace that to go out on a global campaign, you have to get out of the office, get out of the region, get into the international and national conferences so that you can get as many investors that are fit for you in front of you. So, in the past it was go get your tech transfer license, go get your NIH grant money, and then go find a VC that can hopefully find a strategic partner. And what we have found over the last 8 years is that there's a lot of investors that are out there. There's family offices and foundations and impact and venture and patient groups and angels and private equity and hedge funds. So one of the things that's really important is to be able to know that when you get what we call a global target list of investors, a GTL, that that get a global target list of investors of all of the different categories of investors that are a fit for your stage of development in your product set. And then, family offices might have one strategy of why they like to do early stage, and VCs might have another, and corporate might have another, and big pharma might have another. So really understanding what the category of investor that's a fit for you, but also what their theme is and what their investment mandate is, and then understanding what the nuances are between them. Next slide, please. So we were talking about, what the funding choices are, and they're really vast. And so when you go to our conferences, we will have 10 categories of investors, and there'll be, from the Pacific Rim, from Europe, from all over North America, and they'll be across those categories of investors. So that's like really important. And a lot of times people are sticking to their region And the region might be the Northeast, or the region might be from New York and Boston, or DC, New York and Boston, or LA in San Francisco and Seattle. But if you're just going into a particular region, the problem is that you're going to run into getting yourself in front of enough investors such that you don't run out of investors and you didn't get where you were trying to accomplish. So we have this concept where if you find out all the investors on the planet that are a fit for your stage of development and your product set, you can then start to whittle those down. And Greg will come in with a demo in a little bit. And you should be able to find 400 to 600 investors globally. And then once you have that global target list, we have this idea of like, how do you message them properly and how do you go after them? And then we have this vehicle, which is these partnering conferences that take place every couple of months. So you can really get into a groove of going to these meetings, meeting a bunch of people that are a fit for you, catching them again at the next meeting where you might be giving them an update, and then talking to some new investors, and then repeating the process. And so I was just working with a company at our last Resi conference, a really cool company out of Palo Alto, and they have some abilities to really pinpoint the location of pain. And so they were trying to figure out like exactly what's my investment strategy and what investors do I want to go after, and how do I chop up like European PE and VC and family offices, and really looking to try and prescribe like what their deal was going to look like. And I was kind of backing them up a little bit, saying, let's go find out all the people that are a fit for you, and then let's go canvass those people, and then let's go see who raises their hand that are interested in talking to you, and then let's go have the meeting, and let's go repeat that a couple of times at this last conference we just had, and then in January, and then in March. And then after you've done 3 or 4 or 6 months worth of meetings, you can now kind of regroup and say, gee, I've met with 30 or 40 investors, and here's what I've learned, and here's kind of where I'm at, and let me adjust to what's going on. So a lot of this has to do with socializing who you are in the marketplace, finding partners that are a fit, and then how do you start a dialogue with them that turns into a relationship that eventually turns into a capital allocation. So, back to the regional thing, it's just really better to look at your region is super important, but also go out of your region into North America and into Europe and then Pacific Rim. Next slide, please. The one of the big myths are, can you do this in 6 to 9 months? We've seen people do it very quickly, but for the most part, we'll see a couple of thousand fundraising CEOs go through the turnstiles in a year of Resi conferences, and people do get funded in 6 to 9 months. But if you have to plan for it, I would say it's 9 to 18 months. And if you're lucky enough to get funding before that, then it's great. It's not necessary to understand how each category of investor works, just go after them all. So, there's this kind of blanketing approach that a lot of people say, let's just go after everything that moves and see what happens. But, if you're a therapeutic company, it could be, 10, 15, 20 years before you're going to get to commercialization. And so it could cost a lot more money to get into a relationship with you. And so some angels and some family offices might be in the early stage saying, we don't mind a 5 to 7 year of a $5 to $15 million, ongoing relationship, but we want to see an exit faster. And so really understanding the nature of each investor and kind of like what their theme is and what their mandate is and how they look at you, from validating you and vetting you to helping you move through the process, and how much money they will allocate via how many rounds, is really important to understand the dynamic of each category of investor. Next slide, please. A lot of times we see that the scientists, entrepreneurs that we talk to, they're really into the science and technology, which they should be, And they think that that's the only thing that matters. And it's really important. But a lot of the investors that we speak with, they're really more, they care about the technology, but they're also trying to figure out uh, what is this team going to be like to go down the road with for 3, 4, or 5 years, if not more, and how does the team work together, and how is the founders work together, and how do I figure out, can I live with this team and can I work with them and help them develop? So a lot of the time when I'm working with fundraising CEOs, they want to go into the meeting with their PowerPoint and they just want to go into the technology. And I'm always trying to dial them back a little bit, saying, why don't you go into the meeting with the PowerPoint or a couple of slides of the PowerPoint in your back pocket, but why don't you just start a conversation with the investor? So find out who they are and what they're doing and how many companies they've invested in, and what their theme is and what their expertise is in the market of the theme of their company, and just really have kind of a heart-to-heart one-on-one conversation when you first meet somebody, instead of just going right into the down and dirty aspects of how the technology is different and how you differentiate it. So just kind of getting out of it's the technology to it's the relationship, and the relationship has to do with your team, interrelationships, and how your team is going to be dealing with the investor, and how those relationships will go is as important as the technology going forward. When we travel around the world to these different incubators and accelerators, we find that there is always somebody saying that if you can't get a warm referral to an investor, you can't call them because they won't have a meeting with you. And there's no doubt about it that if you can find somebody that knows an investor and knows you're a fit for the investor and can refer you, that's the best thing that could ever happen, because it's a warm referral. The investor knows the person and the person knows what the investor looks like, and he's sending someone to them as a referral. So there's a really good chance that you're going to get in. And so that's the best. But it doesn't mean if you don't have a referral that you can't keep on going. And so I have a thing which is based on fit. So if a investor is into CNS, for the elderly, dementia, Alzheimer's, et cetera, and they're investing in early stage technologies for that product, and you've never met them before, but you know exactly what their mandate is, and you have a bleeding edge Alzheimer's product that does something with the chemistry of the brain and goes through the blood-brain barrier, and ticks a bunch of really interesting boxes for an investor. If they see that message from you, because you're a fit for their mandate, they're going to want to meet with you because they're looking for you. So a lot of times it's people will come up with these reasons why I can't go after an investor, but a fit is a really good thing. So if the investor is looking for an early stage company that's doing therapeutic development in Alzheimer's, and you have a technology that's got some breakthrough aspects to it, and you can communicate that quite well to the investor, then you're going to be in good shape. And when you come to my conference, they're going to read what your message is, and they're more than likely going to have a meeting with you. So please feel free to fish me out for any questions, because the first two were great. And let's go on to the next. Go ahead, Ashley.
Did you mention the middle one? It's good to have an indication preference.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's this big thing about platform. When you're in the university setting or doing the research, and you're kind of developing this new technology, and you go, holy smokes, we can use this technology against various diseases. And then you have to start talking about, well, do we just sell the platform and try and go to a big pharma who will buy the platform and then get this big deal? Or do we just go find, use this platform to go after one disease, and then use this one disease as a proof of concept that the platform works, and then go after another disease and another disease. And pretty soon you've got a bunch of data around a bunch of diseases that show that this platform can be really compelling and dynamic. And so that's really kind of an interesting situation for a lot of people. But our chief scientist, Bill Kobrenner, worked at Abbott and AbbVie for many years as a scout. And he basically said, when you're dealing with drug companies and you have a platform, they've got a lot of people in-house that are working on similar stuff. And so if you're going to try and do a deal with them, it's going to be really a long-term deal where they're really vetting your technology, and you give them your technology to take in-house. And then you don't really see a lot of what's going on with the day-to-day. And, weeks turn into months and months turn into years, and you're still trying to get your platform evaluated. And he was always recommending to us to guide people to say, if you've got a platform technology, that means the really big players, the big pharma companies, maybe 120 of them might be good for your particular platform if the disease match what the pharmas are doing. But a better way to do it is to take the platform and give an example, find a disease that you can target where you can get the data and you can really start to show some results. And then that validates your platform. And if you can do it once or twice, when you're going against or going to the pharma and you've got a couple of instances where you're showing that your platform is working and getting traction, it puts you in a lot better place. Number one, with the pharma, but number two, it also puts you in a really good situation, because if you're in IND or going into phase one and you've got data and you've got a prototype or a proof of concept, that means you can go look at all of the other investors that invest in a particular disease. And so that can be a good situation for you.
Jeff, do you have a question? I see that you're unmuted and your video is on. Hello.
And I leaned up. Dennis, this number 6 is sort of relevant to some things we've been talking about. So for the lead candidate, so we're a synthetic biology company. Obviously, there's some advantages to selling that platform, and we have partnerships. But if you're thinking about a lead candidate, when you say data, do you mean human data, or is preclinical data sufficient?
Yeah. So I mean, I think we all get, you're going to go get your mouse data. You're going to go get your start to get a proof of concept going. And, we're in the early stage world. So pretty much by phase 2B, you're pretty well leaving us and you're into a whole other world where there's exits and things are getting done. But, from the preclinical to phase 2B, there's all that stuff in the middle. And it's a really hard situation because, you can start to get commercial deals where you're taking your technology and you're shortcutting for some big players, and they're watching how you use your technology, and it's great. And then you're able to, concentrate on a particular indication that can really showcase what you're doing. So all along the lines is when you start getting into a discussion with a strategic partner or a strategic investor in the early stage, they're going to want to know, so where's your data at? You've got some preclinical data, that's great. You're going for IND, that's even better. You're going for phase 1, that's even better. So what are your milestones, and what kind of data are you getting from your test with the animals, et cetera? And then, there's another important aspect. I was dealing with this company, Regulogene, in Arizona, and they have this gene expression technology where they can modulate proteins that are either too little or too much, which are the foundation of a lot of diseases. And so they met a Pacific Rim company that had a lot of PhDs there that could quickly synthesize these molecules that they were designing and send them back to this rat lab where they were going against pancreatic cancer. And, so this guy had like a great famous scientist that had been working on gene expression with proteins for like 40 years. They had this unique relationship with this CRO where they could design the molecule, send it to them. They could synthesize it and send it back, and they could go right into this pancreatic rat lab at the University of Arizona, and then they could, get test results within 45 days. So when you start to add all of those things up, you've got like a famous guy who's been working on the problem for a long time. He's made some, good. He's won and lost many battles, but he's finally got a breakthrough. And then you've got a process with a CRO where you can get data fast. It's all those things that kind of add up that start to turn into, why do we like this company? Why do we want to give them money? And what does their process look like?
That's great. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, pleasure, Jeff. Next slide, or where are we, Ashley?
We're doing good. I do think we should try to wrap it up. I think you're almost done with the 10 minutes, so that's good.
Okay, Greg, are you on deck, Greg?
I am. I'm ready to go.
Okay, so a couple of minutes, or?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I say keep going, Dennis. And
Okay. So so the other one is Jeff. Those are great, insightful questions. I really appreciate them. So the thing is that you run into, it's like a lot of people think it's only the technology, and we have to just inundate whoever we're going after with as much information as we can. And that really causes a lot of bottleneck, because if you're going to go to the Resi conference that we have coming up in January, there's probably going to be like 200 or 250 other fundraising CEOs there. There'll probably be like 400 or 600 investors. So there's going to be, there's this idea that if you can really streamline what your message is and what your product is and why you're different, and if you can get it down to a really cogent, lucid messaging, it's really going to help you differentiate yourself, because we're in the golden age of life science technology, and 10 years or 8 years ago when I started, there'd be you could see the really good guys from the mediocre folks. And now you're really seeing a big difference. Like, everybody's great. All of the technology is bleeding edge. So there's a lot of competition in the marketplace. And one of the challenges for the fundraising CEOs, because there's such strong competition there, is how do you differentiate yourself? And so we think the best way to differentiate yourself is to really have crisp, cogent, lucid messaging and branding about who you are, what you do, so that somebody can look at you and say, these people really have their acts together. We love their technology. We love how they can net out what their value is and how they're different, and we'll go talk to them. So it's, investors don't have a lot of time to go through 40 or 50 pages worth of stuff. They will when they do their due diligence and vet you, but initially you have to really be strong. And we go through the thing when you're talking with scientist entrepreneurs, and they have to start dealing with business and finance and some of the other aspects that are not on their radar screen typically. The strategic partner investor is going to want to make sure that the scientist entrepreneur, knows that if they're getting millions of dollars, that it's important that they're a good steward of the money, and that they're a good steward of like how the milestones are going to be met, and that there's a team in place, and that there's metrics, and it's measurable, et cetera, et cetera. So, showing that you're more well-rounded than just pure science can be helpful. So we talked about, science being the hard part and business being the easy part. I think at this point, Greg, it'd probably be good for you to do a demo and show the team what we've got.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Greg Mannix, and I'm VP of International Business Development, and I've been with LSN for about almost 5 years now. And today, I just wanted to go over a tool that some of you may be familiar with, some of you may not, but it's the tool that Dennis mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it is a database of investors that will allow you not only to identify investors who are a fit for you, but also have a way to be able to reach out to them and create this global target list of investors that is so important. And Dennis also mentioned that fundraising is really a numbers game. So identifying as many investors as possible will really help you, find the right investors and have a better chance of success reaching out. So our database is curated in-house, as we mentioned earlier. That means we have a team of investor analysts who are contacting and learning about these different investors, and you can see how international it is. So it's a big number of investors from the US, but literally investors from all over North America, Europe, and Pacific Rim, Asia, mostly. You can also see that we're not tracking just VCs and angel groups. We're tracking all of those categories of investors that, as was mentioned earlier in Dennis's presentation, are really important in early stage funding today. So we're tracking 10 categories of investors, and many of them are very relevant in early stage funding. And what the database allows you to do is to identify which investors are a fit for your type of technology, your indication area, your stage of development, your stage of fundraising. We can really narrow it down so that when we draw a list, this list will be targeted investors who have a high percentage of probability of being interested in talking to you. So this will really make your fundraising more streamlined, more efficient. And the way we do it is we pick a main sector. So if you're developing a drug, we would say therapeutics. We can select a subsector of type of technology. So let's say small molecules as an example. And then we can also pick a type of disease, a disease indication. For example, let's say oncology is common. And a lot of the companies we work with are in early stage. So we can say the stage of development for this particular drug is, say, preclinical to phase 1 in that space. All right. And then, you guys are based in the US, the NIH companies, and that will narrow down the geographical exposure. And if we do a broad search, there are other filters that we can put in. But just using those, we can identify over 600 potential investors, literally from around the world. So let's see what kind of investors we've identified. So here's a VC from Silicon Valley, a VC from China, a corporate VC from Germany, a VC from the UK, VC from San Francisco. So you get the idea. We have all these different kinds of investors from around the world, including big pharma, corporate VCs, etc. So let's take a look at one of them, say 5AM Ventures in San Francisco. Can you see the investor profile, Ashley?
Yes.
Yep, good. Okay, so you get some general information about the investor, the size of their fund, where they're located, et cetera. But where you really get the detailed information about each investor is in the section that we call mandate. And in the mandate section, you can actually, you can read detailed information that's taken in a personal interview, and you can see which of our colleagues in the investor research team have spoken to this investor. So in this case, it's our colleague Jessica, and she takes down information like, for example, that this particular investor invests from seed to Series A typically. So that's good information to know. They typically reserve a considerable amount, 25 million, to invest over the life of a portfolio company. So you get this, very detailed information about allocation, but also about their sectors and subsectors of interest. And here, they will therapeutic opportunities in any indication space. So they're what we call an opportunistic investor. They're also agnostic to modality. So you get this kind of granular information about how they invest, how much they invest, what areas they're interested in. And importantly, if you identify the investors who are a good fit for you, you need to know how to reach out to them. And you get this message from the investor that is taken in the interview when we speak to the investor. And this is the investor telling you how they want to be contacted. So you get the contact person, and you get the contact email of the person you should reach out to. And always mention Life Science Nation when you reach out. These investors know that they're on our database, and they use us for quality deal flow. So they're expecting to hear from companies like yours reaching out through the database. And finally, there's a lot of other contact information.
Hey, Greg, this is
5AM is a fairly large firm, but you can see there are other key players in this investment firm. You have
Hey,
their
Greg.
contact information, phone number, et cetera.
Greg, this is Dennis. There was a question about do they get to use this database as part of the Resi conference? And the answer is not the full database, but we have this premier partnering, which most of the NIH folks have access to. Could you explain that?
Yes. So one of the things that makes our partnering platform for the Resi conference that you're attending unique is that some of the information from these investors is uploaded from our database to the partnering platform. And there's a similar mechanism for identifying which investors to request a meeting with during the conference. And if you want a more detailed description of each investor, you can upgrade to Premier Partnering. In fact, I'm not sure if the NIH group is getting Premier Partnering. They are,
do.
right?
Yep.
Okay. So the answer is yes, you will have access to the full investor information that you saw here, as well as the email contacts for all of the investors who are attending the conference. And we're expecting about 400 plus investors to be attending. So you will have access to this information from the database for about 400 investors. It's really a great opportunity.
So we did have a question about the cost of the database, and this is something Dennis had mentioned a little bit earlier about the TABA program. So all companies that have funding through NIH have the opportunity to request TABA funding, and we do provide services that are through that, and one of them is this investor database. It is offered as a yearly subscription, and Greg, if you want to kind of just talk about that a little bit more, but I can send over some follow-up information after this call and show you guys where you can find all of the information as well.
Yep. So the database is sold on a one-year subscription basis. It's $7,000 US. And that includes full access for a year, as well as a pretty intense onboarding process that we go through with you, where one of the investor analysts, one of our senior investor analysts, will be on the call together with either Ashley or one of my colleagues or myself, and we'll go over not only using the database, but also strategies for reaching out to the investors, messaging for reaching out to the investors, that type of work. And we do have a program that includes intense consulting on branding and messaging that goes into a lot of detail to help you get ready. And as Ashley mentioned, that can be something that we offer as part of the TABA program.
Hey, Greg,
so that would include access to the database and all.
Greg,
Yeah,
this
go
is
ahead.
Dennis again. There's another question. In the meeting today, how many investors did we say are already signed up?
So I let's answer that question in just a moment because Greg's going to transfer it over to me in partnering, and we'll be able to see that within our partnering platform.
Oh, okay.
I did see the question.
Okay.
But so I think now is a good time, Greg, if it sounds good to you, I want to get in there and show everyone sort of how partnering is going and then give them some good tips on how their meetings are going.
Absolutely. I'm going to make you the host again.
Perfect. And Dennis, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in quick.
Just 1 second, because Greg, thank you for that great demo. The point is that we really do have a great database. We've been curating it for a long time, and it really works. I think we've helped over 400 companies raise over 500 million, and so we can prove that out anytime anybody would like to. But I think the thing that's super important here is we've developed this process, unlike other partnering events. If you go to a partnering event and you go and spam all the investors, a lot of the investors are really consultants or broker dealers or something. So they're trying to sell you instead of give you money. And so we don't do that at our conferences. We make those people sign up as service providers, and they're great if you have the money to hire them to help you raise the funds. But all of our investors, are vetted and proven. And then the thing that's the real differentiator here, it's basically three things. We have this matching capability because when you put in your profile, we're going to put in the investor profiles, and then we have this matching capability to give you a list of the people that are a fit for you, and you can go into the partnering software, and Ashley's going to show you that. So number one is matching. Number two is messaging. We've written a book on the subject. Please get a free copy. We'll send it to you. We have consulting services that we give around messaging, how to do your messaging adroitly so that you can get meetings. And then the third thing is we have this 4-step follow-up process. So a lot of the times people will go to this meeting and they'll send out 1 or 2 maybe follow-ups. But you really need to have a process in place for follow-up, because if you do it wrong, you can get 6 or 7 meetings. And if you do it right, you can get 17 to 20 meetings. And so that's some of the things that we'll be talking about today. Over to you, Ashley.
Thank you. And that was perfect. Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Dennis. So yeah, I'm going to go through, we have about a half an hour. Now that partnering is open, all of you should have already received your login credentials. It came an email directly from Meeting Mojo, who's our third party, and it would have came in 2 emails. If anyone has not received a login information, you should have received it on Monday. Please reach out to me directly. You all have my email because that's the most important thing, because you can be in there booking meetings, requesting meetings right now. So the portion of this, again, we have about a half an hour. I want to go into the partnering platform and just give you a couple, just some information on how to really maximize your participation at Resi in January. So when you first log on to the partnering platform, this is our home screen. Now, the navigation for partnering is this like black bar at the top here, and you can see we're at the home screen up on the left. So the home screen is going to include any of your meetings that are awaiting your response. So if you have any incoming meeting requests, any outgoing meeting requests, any meetings confirmed, and new messages. So this is a great kind of home screen where right when you log in, especially once you start using the tool, it's a great just snapshot of what's going on. But before that, and really when you're just setting up your profile for the first time, the most important thing to do when you first get in here is go all the way to the right-hand side to the account tab. So the account tab is going to have your company here, and then it's going to have yourself and a colleague, if you guys have a colleague joining you. The most important thing is clicking on your name. So you can see here that there's quite a few of us from Life Science Nation because we are putting on the conference, but you'll want to hit edit and your name. Here is where you can put in, you can add a picture of yourself, which is just another it's just another good personal touch to include a picture in here so then the people know who they're meeting with beforehand. You can include your title and an alternative email if you have one, and also a bio. After you set up your own profile, it's important to go to edit your company. So again, this one says Life Science Nation because that's where my company name. So you're going to go to edit your company name, and here's where you can include your logo. Again, it's just a nice touch if you have a logo. You're able to put in your business profile. And at the top here, I don't have the option because it's just not, I'm not a startup company, is that you have the opportunity to include 2 PDFs for your company. So we recommend including a non-confidential pitch deck and your executive summary. So then it's all listed in the partnering platform. So then you're not having to send it as a follow-up or sending it in a separate email or anything. It's all built in so the investors can see it. So we've mentioned a lot how we have this matching technology. So this is a really important step as you're putting your profile together, that you click off all of the sectors and the subsectors and your indications and your phase of development within this section, because this is what's going to help match investors up to you as well. So of course you're looking for investment, but investors that come to Resi are also looking for investment. So they're able to do the same sort of searching that I'm going to show you how you're doing for them. So this is very important to come in here and putting all of this information. Yours is going to look a little bit different. It's going to have some information about like your funding and what you're looking for. So just very, very important, especially for these the check boxes. Does anyone have any questions on that? Has anyone done it? Has anyone had any questions while doing it?
Just one quick input. Keeping it as general as possible is going to be better than trying to like really get down and dirty and get a lot of details. If you just can say, I'm a drug company, I'm in the CNS realm, and you know, I'm at phase 1 or preclinical, that's going to give you the more fits than going down and specifying more. That's just one quick input.
Thank you, Dennis.
Mike, one thing that I found in updating my bio was that I think I had to enter my password twice in order to get it saved properly. I don't know if that was something I was doing wrong, but just so everybody else, in case you run into that.
Interesting. You had to hit save twice?
No, I had to input my password like at the top. Yeah, I had to do that password twice in order to get it to save properly.
Oh, well, thank you for that feedback. If anyone else had that, let me know.
I haven't seen that. When I put my password in once, I just click it in it, and then I don't have to put it in anymore when I log in.
I have a question here. Why doesn't the company account profile allow for consistent formatting on the text in each section? Is there somehow we can view a PDF output of this content like we do with gus.com? Oh, okay. So disregard. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So the next.
Glad you found the answer.
The next important piece or step in partnering once you're in here and your profile is all set up for yourself and your company. The next step is to go to the schedule tab, which is right next to the account tab. And you'll see that each day is a tab here. And when you first sign on, it's going to be all available. And just to note as well, when you click unavailable, you'll be able to see that there's 2. Actually, at any point, you're going to be able to see the first time zone is the time zone that the conference is in. So that's Eastern Standard Time. And then the timing that's underneath, if you're on Pacific time or if you're in a different time zone, your personal time zone will be listed underneath that. So just in case there's any confusion. So it's really important to come in here and just block off your schedule just by clicking the available button. And
keeping in mind, it's a 24/7 capability.
Yes. So you want to make sure that you're not getting meetings booked at, say, 12 in the morning, your time. So it's just really important to block off your schedule based off of your working hours. Unfortunately, I do see the question about, does it sync to Google Calendar or anything? It doesn't, unfortunately. That's why it's really important to come back to partnering every couple of days and see if you have any meetings booked. And then I would just,
The Outlook though, right?
no, it does not.
It does for me.
Oh, well, Dennis, maybe you can, maybe
Well,
you
no,
can.
let's just keep on going. Maybe it sends it to my, it sends a confirmation.
Yeah, so every time you receive it is good to come check this every couple of days in case you miss one. You will get emails every time something is booked with you. Yes, you will get emails throughout the process, definitely. But just in case you don't want to miss anything, it's not going to go directly onto your calendar.
Right. So I'm sorry about that. What I do is I request a meeting and then it says you requested a meeting and then it says you accepted a meeting. And when that happens, it then will it doesn't update your calendar, but it will ping you.
Yes. Okay, so I will definitely show you what a meeting looks like. So we'll get there in 1 second. I saw that question. But before we do that, I want to go into the search feature and kind of show you, because right now you're like, okay, I'm blocking off my schedule, but kind of what do I do next and how do I start really requesting and booking meetings, right? So the most important, or another thing, after you've now done your profile, you've gotten your schedule all situated. Now you want to go in there and really start booking some meetings. And then this is going to answer a question that we had earlier about how many investors are currently registered for Resi right now as well. So right here is the search feature, and this is where you're going to go to number one, search and look for investors that you want to meet with. So the first thing is this on the left-hand side is what the matching feature or the filterable feature that we've been kind of referring to this whole time. And this is really how you're going to narrow down your search to really find investors that fit your stage of development and your indication in main sector. But before that, so the first thing that we want to do is select, it's defaulted to all attendees. So obviously all of you are looking for investment. So you're going to select investor. And you'll see here that 168 results were found. So that's 168 investment firms. So that's companies. So a lot of times investment firms send multiple people. So if you click, it just goes to organizations first. If you click attendees and then investors again, you'll see that currently we have 234 investors currently registered for Resi January. What's the average number of employees? That's a great question. I would say a lot of them send about 2, but Greg or Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the big folks, some of the big pharma guys, they have different divisions and departments. So they might send somebody in CNS and somebody in oncology and whatever groups. But for the most part, it's usually it's one, a couple, or 5 or 6. So there's a lot of people at these conferences. That's why it's really important to get above the white noise, because everyone's going after these folks. So if your messaging is really adroit, that's like super important, and getting it correct is super important. And so I'll turn it back to Ashley, but if anybody here today would like me to review their messaging or have a call, I'm more than happy to set a half hour aside and go through your deck with you and do a little one-on-one mentoring or coaching if you need it. Happy to do it, and I do it all the time.
Yes, just let me know and I can get it scheduled. Vera, yes, I can do that for you. If you don't mind just pinging me separately, and I will do it after this. I can copy your information. So to kind of go back, so we currently have 234 attending investors. And then again, the organization investors, so the firms, is 168. But that's still quite a big number, and it really isn't broken down to really what you're looking for. So now
you might wind up with 3 times that by January 14th.
Yes. Yep. So right here, I want to come back to the filters. So we are filtering very similar to the database that Greg showed you. And that's kind of why we like to show the database first, to kind of give you context of, all of these profiles for the investors are filled out because of our backend database that we have, which again kind of makes the reason why Resi is such a great conference to attend in terms of partnering. So you'll see here that we do have investor type, but I would honestly keep that open while you're doing your search. But here you'll see that you have main sector. So just as we're going through it, I'm going to just select therapeutics. And every time you click on a filter, it's going to refresh automatically. And you can see now that we went down to 118. And then you have the indications here. So we have all the indications again that we saw earlier in the database demo. And again, I'll just select oncology. And again, it's just going to do that refresh. And we just kind of keep going down from there. So it's down to 101. And now we're able to select the phase of development here. So I'm just going to put preclinical. So just by doing those 3 filters, which is definitely what we recommend, it brought us down to 86 results found.
Ashley,
Yes.
I always want to do the one I'm in and the one I'm about to go to. So preclinical and phase 1, because, you're going to get there eventually. And so, it's not that far away. And so I think it's going to give you more investors. Did it?
So we can only do one at a time. So if you want to do preclinical, and you can do it again for phase 1. However, the next step to really going through these, because 86 is still a lot, but it is a numbers game, and we want to send out as many requests as are a good fit. So that's why right now, so we have these 86 here, is that we want to kind of open up each profile. They each all of them have a little paragraph at the top here that gives more information of where they're based, what they invest in, what their allocation size is for each deal. And then it goes into like all of the things that you guys selected when you were opening or creating your profile is what we have for the investor. And again, that's kind of the matching that happens. And you can see here, Dennis, to your point, that some of them have multiple listed. So when you're going through that initial search, you'll be able to see that their phase of development is phase 1, preclinical and phase 1. You're also able to see their investor type. So it's really important to just go through each one, really see which ones are a good fit and who you want to book meetings with.
Hey, Ashley?
Yes.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Since everyone on this call has the Premier Partnering, as you're reading through, I think it's just really, it will help you to take a look at the Premier profile because you get more information. So if you want to explain how to do that, Ashley, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, and thank you, Greg. I wasn't even thinking that all of them had Premier, so it's perfect. Okay, so each investor here, so every time you open up one of the investors, you'll see that there's the second one here, it says Premier Mandate. And because NIH has chosen you to participate, we have given you Premier Access. So in order to access the additional information provided in a Premier Pass, you select this link. This is going to open up a new window, and you'll actually have to re-sign in. Everyone should have received a second email with the Premier login credentials. Again, if you did not receive it, please reach out to me. Okay, so here is what the Premier looks like, the mandate for this investor. And this might look a little bit familiar because this is very similar to what Greg showed us in the database demo. So you'll see that we have the allocation information here, which is the first paragraph that is included in the regular pass. But then you have the section sectors and subsectors of interest, which just goes more granularly into what they are actually interested in investing in. And also their company and management team requirements. So if any of the investors have specific requirements for your management team, which is a very helpful thing, especially in the early stages, you can come right in here and you'll be able to see for each investor. And then also, very important on the bottom here, the Premier package or the Premier registration does also include direct contact details of each investor who is in attendance at Resi. and it will be found right on the bottom. All right. Greg, a question came in. How long after the Resi conference will we have access to the database or Premier or the partnering? Can you shed light on that?
Yes, the partnering platform is open for 2 weeks after the conference, and you'll have access to all of the information. You're still able to interact with investors through the platform while it's open, but since you have you have the email contact for all of those investors, you'll be able to continue following up.
Perfect. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. So thank you, Greg.
Yep.
Okay, so now I want to talk about how to actually book meetings with these investors. So once you find investors that are good fit, you've done your due diligence with looking at their profiles, you've gone into their premier mandates, and now you want to book meetings. It's very simple. It's right built into the platform. On the premier page, it's this link right here. Or if you're on the standard page, it is this blue button that says book meeting. So when you want to book a meeting with Owen, say you select book meeting, and it's going to bring you to this page. So this page is going to just have some information, who you are, the attendee, and you also have the opportunity, again, if you have one of your colleagues joining you at Resi, you can then select their name as well. So they are included in the meeting when you book it. And then you have the option to include a message. It is very important to include a message and include as much detailed information as you can. And I'm going to send this document that I have up on my screen after the call as well as a follow-up. This is an example of what we give to clients to help them with their messaging to the investors to make sure that you're covering all of your bases. You put in, what your product is, the need, any achievements, and what you're currently asking for as well, and then include an example. So once you do this, you then select yes, that you would like to request this meeting. So you're probably wondering, okay, I'm selecting yes, but I'm not picking a day, I'm not picking a time. Like, what does that even mean? So once you select yes, that's where when we set up our schedule, it was very important to just put in your availability of when you're going to be working. The system is going to pick a date or pick a day and time that you guys are both next available. And once the meeting is booked, again, we'll get an email saying that you actually booked, you requested the meeting, and then you'll also get another email when the meeting is confirmed. And once the meeting is confirmed, and David, I believe you're on the call today as well, I'll make sure to have my colleague Karen remove this, but I'll use it as an example now from a question that we had come up a few minutes ago, is that, so at 10 a.m. I have a meeting booked with David. So what happens is when 10 a.m. comes along on January 11th, I come to my schedule page and you just click right on the name of the person that you're meeting with. And right here is where you start your meeting. So there's no additional step that you need to take to schedule any Zoom meeting. There's no GoToMeeting, any other software that you need to use is all built into our platform. There's also a chat feature here. And all you have to do is select start right when it begins, and you'll be on camera. You'll be able to share your screen with any PowerPoint information. You can also come to the screen even as I am right now. And if you want to add any colleagues, say you forgot to maybe check the button before when you were booking the meeting, and you can just select the person that you'd like to have join you. And you can also reschedule if there is, if something does come up that was unexpected, you can come right to the screen and hit reschedule. And you're able to then kind of see when the other person is busy, and you're able to book the meeting when you are mutually available. Does all of that make sense?
Ashley, this is my quick question.
Sure.
When it chooses a meeting time, can you pick a different time? I don't think I fully understood that. Or do you have to start with
Yeah,
the
you can go in and
first?
modify your meeting and say, can
Okay.
go do it again. If something came up and you didn't catch it, you can go reschedule it again, but you might not be able to get it in. That's why you want to probably make it a priority. Once you
Oh,
get,
I was talking more about when you're requesting a meeting.
So when you're requesting a meeting, it's always going to do the next available time for both of you. And if it doesn't work for you, like at that time, again, if something pops up, the only way to go and like reschedule it is once it's already booked, clicking on it and going into that reschedule tab. And at that point, once you hit this reschedule button, you're able to see the other person's availability too.
So there's not a way to see that to begin with?
Unfortunately not, no. But that's the reason why the partnering platform like matches you together. It does it so, again, it's a global event. We have people signing in from all over the world. So making sure your schedule is up to date is key. Any other questions? These are great questions.
Are meetings that like say our CEO requests and confirm duplicated to other company attendees, or do we have to just we schedule separately?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah. So if our CEO requests meetings and books meetings, those are not duplicated over to say the CFO's schedule and/or
if he clicks you in.
Yeah, you definitely want, if your CEO is booking the meetings and they want you to be included, just making sure they could either come to the screen and add you at that point, or when they're booking the meeting here, just have them select your name every time, and you'll also get an email saying that there was a meeting requested.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Can you give us a sense for what hit rate we should get on meeting requests? Just kind of planning out scheduling, and if I'm not getting any acceptance.
So that is a great question, Mike,
Yeah.
and it kind of brings me to my next point and what Dennis already kind of mentioned about a 4-step method. So at LSN, just because we do this, obviously Dennis has his strategy on how to help companies like yourself get meetings with investors. We've put together a 4-step method to really make sure that you guys get a lot of meetings. And honestly, especially with the other NIH companies that we've worked with, they've used this method and received a lot of meetings, upwards of like 20, 25 meetings. And really that step or methodology is the first initial reach that you do out to all the investors. Again, we had that list of 86 that had come up. Once you book that meeting, so that's your first initial outreach to the investor. So every couple of days from then, you want to log back into partnering and you want to send a message. So each time you come into partnering, you'll be able to see, once you book a meeting with the investor, this button will now be grayed out, and you'll be able to see some information right here that you did request a meeting with the investor. And from there, you want to do now another follow-up to them, send them a message, and maybe talk about something else very specific, like your management team. So go in and have do a follow-up about your management team. And then again, in a couple more days, do another follow-up and talk about the market need of why your product is so important. And then from there, doing another follow-up in the next couple of days, maybe talking about a specific piece of your technology. And we have found that companies that really go in here and do the due diligence and manage the partnering platform in this way, where you're really setting up and following up with the investors, you have a lot more luck in getting, instead of maybe having like 5 to 10 meetings, you would get, again, closer to that 20 meeting mark.
So just a quick thing. The thing that's really funny about this is you're going into a partnering event and there's like all these subtleties on how to be successful. So a lot of times people say, well, okay, I'm going to go to a partnering event and I'll just go, hey, you're an investor, you look like a good fit, can I talk to you? And it's just this really kind of, cavalier, like, let's have a meeting approach. And it doesn't work at all. And so then people say, I requested all these meetings and I didn't get anywhere, so your conference isn't any good. And then we go in and we say, okay, let's look at your message that you sent to the investors. And the message is just not really interesting. It's really short. It doesn't, show that you did any research and know what the investor's doing. And you just requested one meeting. So you've got like 250 competitors all going after the same investor, and one person is just kind of have a, oh, hi, let's have a meeting approach, and the other person is like, I'm an NIH client, a constituent, I've been working there, I'm a phase 2, this is what I'm doing, this is why I've read your profile, I think you're a fit for me, and here's something that's interesting about our technology that you might not have seen before. And if you just do it really, cogent, super, to the point, not a big long dissertation of like, investors know the size of the market, so you don't have to tell them the size of the market that you're going after. And they know a lot of the stuff about what you're probably doing, but you really need to net out what your differences are. And then you hit them up once, and then you've got to hit them up again. So that's why we have this concept of, what's your 6 or 7 word tagline? What's your 5 or 6 sentence elevator pitch? What's your 1-page data sheet that can net stuff out? And then what's a profile of your team members that you could send along and say, hey, this is the first request. Hey, this is the second request. Hey, this is the third request, fourth and final. And even though it might seem difficult for you to go out and do that, you're going, I'm going to, in 2 weeks, send 4 messages to the same person. And the fourth one, I'm going to sound like it's fourth and final, like I'm a bill collector. And you're going, that can't be true, but it's exactly what works. And we've been doing this for 8 years, and you've really got to figure out, how do you get above the white noise? So it's a little bit of a challenge, and it's a little bit outside the comfort zone. But those who learn to do it become very successful at getting meetings, and those who don't just don't get the meetings. And so that's why we have this thing to coach you guys, and that's why we're available to help you with your messaging and stuff, because it really, really works.
Thanks for that. A follow-up question is, do you have any advice on how long should we wait after the first message? I guess 1, to reach back out again, but 2, to know that our hit rate is too low and our original message is just not on target and we need to tweak it. What do you think?
That's a really good question. So, it's kind of like you're going through a maze blindfolded, right? You've got to figure it out. So, please get a free copy of the book that we wrote that explains how to do the, get to the tagline to net it out, right? And then figure out how to get your elevator pitch straight and get your 1-page data sheet, and then have your executive summary and your PowerPoint up on, so that people can access it. And I think you'll find, to me, it's like you do the first message and you just say you got 100 or 150 investors, and you send out the first flight of messages. You wait 2 or 3 days to see what happens. Then you send out the second request. Then, might be a weekend comes along and you send out something Sunday night or Monday. But you want to kind of look at, here's January 14th when the conference is, and here's where I'm starting. And so how do I want to hit my 4 messages? And a lot of the investors wait till like the last 3 days before they start taking meetings, so they can kind of check out everybody. So if you're hitting the investors and you're not being tedious, but you're giving them insightful information and just proving the value of your company, and like you're not like going, this is the 3rd time, like, why aren't you calling me back, or blah blah blah. If you're just kind of hitting them in the right way, you'll start to see the last week you'll really start to move on your meetings. And it's a little bit frustrating, but That's kind of how partnering conferences go. And you have a distinct advantage at our partnering conferences because number one, we will match you. Number two, we'll coach you on the messaging. And number three, we have this 4-step process, which we know will deliver you meetings.
And one last thing I do want to say before we run out of time, because I know we are at the 12:30 mark, so people might have to go, was one other important thing, because we still are actively signing up investors to attend. Right here in the search, again, in the search, when you're looking for investors, it automatically goes to order alphabetically. You can change this to order by date approved. By doing this, you'll be able to see, and going through and doing your filtering accordingly, you'll be able to see new investors that you might not have already reached out to. So that's a very important point, especially since partnering just opened this week, to just every time you come in here and looking at the new investors.
Where's that feature again? I didn't quite see that.
Oh, sure. So it's on the search feature when you're kind of going through and filtering out. It's right on the top right. So it's automatically going to be order alphabetically, but you can change it to order by date approved. So again, I know we're kind of out of time now, but I think that we got through everything that we wanted to. I appreciate everyone signing on today. We really are so thankful for NIH and having companies like yourself so we can help you through your fundraising strategy. If you have any other questions, please feel free. Again, everyone has my email. I am going to follow up with a follow-up email after today. I'm going to send Dennis's book, and I'm also going to send you this example for your intro letters as well. But again, to Dennis's point, if anyone has any interest in having a quick one-on-one with him, I already have someone kind of on deck that already messaged me. Feel free to follow up after this call as well. And thank you to Dennis and Greg. I don't know if you guys had any final thoughts before we end.
No, we just really want to help. We love the NIH. We really want to get you guys funded. We want you guys to go out and save some lives and do some great things. And so we're here to help, and just, take advantage of us. We've got some time. We're all stuck in the house, and if we can help you guys out and get some mentoring and coaching in, when we're happy to do it.
Yep, I would just say we're here to help. So feel free to reach out to us.
And
Thanks for everything. That was great.
All right.
Thank you, guys. That was very helpful.
Thank you all. And again, this was recorded. I also will send this out after the call as well. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch.